Imagine, for just a moment, that you are stranded, and I mean really stranded, deep in a punishing, unforgiving jungle in Brunei.
Right, like the kind of place where the canopy above you is so thick it just blocks out the sun entirely.
Yeah, exactly. And the humidity is absolutely suffocating. But worse than that, imagine that you are starving.
And not just, skipping lunch starving.
No, no. Desperate biological panic starving. You have completely run out of your food
It's
rations.
just an awful situation.
It is. In a bid just to keep your body functioning, you resort to foraging for wild ferns. You're so desperate for sustenance that you are literally choking down rotten fish you manage to find.
Wow.
Yeah. By the time this whole ordeal is over, you have lost a staggering 25 kilograms.
Which is what, roughly 55 pounds?
Right around there, yeah. And your body is so battered that you actually require surgery just to repair the physical damage.
It sounds like the inciting incident of a thriller movie or something.
It really does. But now I want you to think about taking that harrowing near-death experience, pulling yourself out of that jungle, and translating that exact feeling of desperation into one of the most wildly influential video games of the entire 2010s.
It's actually the genesis of an entirely new genre of digital entertainment.
Welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to map the intersection of extreme, real-world survival and digital game design.
And we're doing that by looking at the incredible life of Dean Rockethall.
We're unpacking how a highly disciplined military background unexpectedly birthed the zombie survival sensation, DayZ, and really how one creator's intense personal drive completely disrupted the traditional gaming industry.
This isn't just a standard biography of a game designer. We're looking at a fascinating case study on human resilience today. It is about how profound physical and emotional trauma can be synthesized, processed, and ultimately transformed into digital experiences that resonate with millions of people.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand the jungle, we have to understand where this all started.
All right, the timeline kicks off in a place called Oamaru, New Zealand.
Yep. Born in May of 1981, he attended Waitaki Boys High School, and he developed this really deep fascination with computers early on.
Which was a big deal back then.
It was. His parents bought him an Amiga personal computer, which became his very first introduction to the actual mechanics of video game development.
The Amiga was a foundational machine for an entire generation of programmers.
Oh, absolutely.
It was accessible enough for a teenager to tinker with its architecture, but robust enough to actually compile and build functional, logic-based software. It heavily rewarded curiosity.
And what's incredible is that during this time, he wasn't just like sitting in a dark room coding in isolation.
Right, he was highly social with it.
Yeah, he was playing tabletop role-playing games with a fellow New Zealander named Chris Butcher.
Now that is a name drop.
I know, right? If that name rings a bell for any gaming fans out there, Butcher later became the technical director at Bungie,
Where he worked on absolute juggernauts of the
yes,
industry.
Halo and Destiny.
That is just an immense concentration of future industry influence sitting around a single tabletop.
It really makes you think. I actually want you, listening right now, to consider the childhood hobbies that shaped your current career. You never really know who is sitting across the table from you rolling dice, or how those early imaginative problem-solving sessions are wiring your brain for the future.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what is crucial to understand about Hall is that he did not take a linear path.
No, not at all.
He didn't go from that Amiga computer straight into a major tech hub or a massive game studio.
Right, he took a hard pivot.
He really did. He moved into an environment defined by extreme rigidity. He served as a commissioned officer in the Royal New Zealand Air Force for 5 years.
That is quite the leap, going from the boundless creative freedom of early computer programming to the incredibly strict hierarchy of the Air Force.
That's a massive culture shock.
And he didn't stop there. During that time, he completed a degree at the University of Otago.
Which was funded by a defense scholarship, right?
Exactly. And later, in 2009, he actually re-enlisted in the New Zealand Army. He served as a commissioned officer in the Royal New Zealand Corps of Signals.
Now, the Signals Corps is entirely focused on communications, information systems, and logistics under extreme pressure.
Which seem like polar opposites to game design on the surface.
They do, yeah. You have the highly structured, disciplined, zero margin for error world of the military running parallel to the deeply chaotic creative world of software development.
But they actually complement each other.
Perfectly. The military teaches you how to manage complex, overlapping systems. It teaches you how to handle supply chains, resource management, and how to operate when things inevitably break down.
Which happens constantly in game dev.
Constantly. Those are the exact skills required to wrangle complex code and manage the production of a massive video game. His military background wasn't a detour from his game design career. It was the ultimate training ground for it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because all that theoretical structure and logistical training is about to be violently tested in the real world.
This is the Brunei trip.
Yes. So in 2009, during his time with the Army, Hall was posted on an exchange program with the Singapore Armed Forces. And as part of that exchange, he was sent to Brunei to complete a grueling survival training course.
And we should clarify, this was not a simulated classroom-style training exercise.
Oh, not at all.
This was a brutal physical test of human endurance in one of the most unforgiving environments on the planet.
To make matters worse, Hall was not used to the local diet to begin with. That immediately put him at a physical disadvantage before the hardest parts even began.
He was already running on a deficit.
Right. So as the training progressed into the actual survival component, things went from difficult to genuinely life-threatening. He completely ran out of food.
That is when the desperation truly sets in.
Yeah, he resorted to foraging for those wild ferns I mentioned earlier. He tried to eat rotten fish just to get some kind of caloric intake to keep moving.
We really have to consider the psychological toll of that kind of severe caloric deficit.
It changes you.
It rewires you entirely. When your body starts consuming its own muscle and fat for energy, your mind begins to fracture. The primal instinct to survive just overrides higher-level logic.
Everything else fades away.
Every decision becomes exclusively about the next calorie, the next drop of water, the next hour of survival.
And the physical toll was just devastating. By the end of this training in Brunei, Hall weighed 25 kilograms less. He sustained injuries that were so severe he required surgery to repair his body once he was finally extracted.
He went to the absolute brink of what a human body can endure.
He did. But when he finally recovered, his brain did something extraordinary. He didn't just want to move on and forget the trauma.
No, he wanted to capture it.
Exactly.
He experienced a profound realization about how we train people. Hall realized that traditional military training was highly focused on tactics. Where to point a weapon, how to read a map, how to flank an enemy.
The mechanical stuff?
Right. But it fundamentally failed to train soldiers for the raw, visceral, emotional reactions of a true survival situation.
The panic, the despair, the way your decision-making completely degrades when you are starving and exhausted.
Precisely. He wanted to use video games as a method to simulate that emotional crucible, so soldiers could experience those feelings of desperation and learn to manage them in a safe, simulated environment before they ever hit a real battlefield.
So he takes this brilliant, deeply personal concept, and he pitches it to the leadership within the Army. He essentially says, I have a technology-driven way to make our soldiers emotionally resilient using game simulation.
And the military shows absolutely no interest in the pitch.
Which is wild to me. But wait, I have to ask, why would they reject that? If the goal of the military is to create the most prepared soldiers possible, why reject a tool designed to make them emotionally bulletproof?
It really comes down to institutional inertia. Large, traditional organizations often struggle to see the value in unorthodox, technology-driven solutions.
Especially back in 2009.
Exactly. Especially when those solutions try to quantify something as messy and subjective as human emotion. The military excels at measuring physical fitness and marksmanship. Measuring a soldier's ability to handle simulated despair on a computer screen was likely just too abstract for the brass at the time.
That rejection is the catalyst for the pivot of a lifetime, though. Hall decides, okay, if the military doesn't want this survival simulator, I will release it to the public.
But he couldn't just release a starvation simulator.
Right. To make a grueling emotional simulator appealing to everyday gamers, he needed a hook. He needed a recognizable antagonist to force the player into that state of scrambling for survival.
So he added zombies.
He added zombies.
By adding a fictional supernatural element, the zombies, he was able to deliver the stark, hyper-realistic psychological simulation he originally intended without it feeling like a dry military training module.
He releases this as a mod, which, for those who might not know, is a player-made modification that alters the existing code of a game for the tactical military shooter Arma 2.
And that mod becomes DayZ.
The legendary DayZ.
The genius of DayZ is how the mechanics enforce the psychology. The zombies are dangerous, but anyone who has played it will tell you that the true danger is always the other players.
Because resources are so incredibly scarce.
Exactly. The game forces you into constant moral dilemmas. If you find a can of beans and you run into another player, do you trust them enough to share it?
Or do you assume they will kill you for it, so you decide to kill them first?
It strips away societal norms and drops you right into the emotional tension he felt in Brunei, the degradation of trust under pressure.
The military rejected a serious emotional conditioning tool, so Hall essentially disguised it as a horror game, and millions of teenagers and adults downloaded it to test their own morality.
It's brilliant.
And the rise of this game was meteoric. Before DayZ exploded, Hall was already working his way through the industry. After leaving the Air Force initially, he worked as a producer at Side Interactive in Wellington, New Zealand.
They worked on Speed Racer, the video game in 2008, right?
Yes, exactly. Then he briefly went back to Army, which is when the Brunei incident happened, and then returned to the industry on a contract at Bohemia Interactive to work on Arma 3.
And it was during this time he created the DayZ mod for Arma 2.
It became such a massive phenomenon that it was nominated for the Online Innovation Award at the GDC Online Awards in 2012.
GDC being the Game Developers Conference, one of the biggest industry events in the world.
The success of the mod was so undeniable that Bohemia Interactive quickly brought him on as the project lead to develop a standalone, fully-fledged retail version of DayZ.
He went from eating ferns in the jungle to leading one of the most anticipated game developments on the planet.
But what I find so compelling about Hall is that the self-reliance he learned in the jungle didn't just apply to his game design. He brought that exact same defiant energy to the business side of the gaming industry.
What's fascinating here is how openly he challenged the established business models.
He really did not care for the status quo.
Not at all. By 2012, the video game industry was heavily reliant on the traditional publishing model. Major publishers held all the funding, the marketing power, and the physical distribution channels.
But Hall looked at the landscape and saw a massive paradigm shift. He publicly stated that the 7th generation of consoles, the major platforms of the time, like the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, were at the end of their lives.
And that the PC platform was the space actually driving true innovation.
He turned down many publishers who wanted to swoop in and acquire the rights to DayZ.
He just rejected them outright.
And he bluntly asked them, in very public forums, what value they actually provided in a modern context. He looked at the gatekeepers of a multi-billion-dollar industry and essentially said, with digital distribution on PC, I can patch my game instantly, I can reach my community directly, and I keep the revenue. Why do we need you?
It was a very bold move.
Have you ever looked at a gatekeeper in your own industry, someone standing between you and your audience, and had the courage to ask, what value do you actually bring to this transaction?
It takes immense confidence to ask that question, because for decades, the publisher's answer was simply, we hold the keys to the storefront.
But Hall realized the internet had removed the locks entirely.
His mod had already proven that a direct-to-consumer model worked flawlessly. He exposed the fact that the traditional publishing model was, in many ways, an antiquated system trying to tax a modern digital workflow.
And he put his money where his mouth was. In November 2014, Hall left his highly successful, highly visible position at Bohemia Interactive. He packed up and went back to his roots in New Zealand to found his very own independent game studio, Rocketwerkz.
Building an indie studio is an enormous financial and professional risk, but it afforded him total creative autonomy.
No more gatekeepers.
None. He no longer had to compromise his vision for complex, simulation-heavy ideas to appease a corporate board.
The trajectory of Rocketwerkz really showcases a studio willing to experiment and fail. They announced a debut title called Ion at E3 in 2015, which was an ambitious project that ultimately got canceled.
But that didn't stop them at all.
No, they ventured into virtual reality with a game called Out of Ammo in 2016. In 2017, Hall announced Stationeers, a game drawing heavy inspiration from the cult classic Space Station 13.
That one focused heavily on incredibly detailed, granular system management. Stationeer is a perfect example of his design philosophy.
You aren't just building a base.
Right. You are managing the atmospheric pressure, the mixture of gases, the electrical grids. It requires an almost obsessive attention to detail.
And then in December 2021, Rocketwerkz released Icarus, which is a massive session-based PvE survival game.
PvE meaning player versus environment.
Right, where instead of fighting other players like in DayZ, you are battling the harsh, unforgiving weather and wildlife of an alien planet. He just kept building these intricate, challenging worlds.
This relentless drive to conquer difficult, complex systems isn't just limited to his digital life, though. It bleeds directly back into his physical reality.
What stands out to me here isn't just his professional ambition, but how this drive manifests outside the studio. Dean Hall isn't just surviving jungles. He is actively seeking out the most punishing environments on Earth.
He is an accomplished mountaineer.
He climbed Mount Cook in New Zealand, and then in May of 2013, right in the absolute middle of the DayZ cultural phenomenon, he summited Mount Everest.
He became the 42nd New Zealander to ever reach the top of the world.
Hall has stated that his experiences in mountaineering actively form part of the inspiration for his game design work.
When you analyze it, the parallels between climbing Everest and his game mechanics are striking.
How so?
Think about mountaineering, especially at the level of Everest's death zone. It is an environment that is completely indifferent to your existence. It is brutally unforgiving.
A single mistake can be the end.
A single mistake regarding your oxygen supply, your footing, or misjudging a weather window can be instantly fatal. It requires constant, meticulous resource management.
Which is exactly what you are doing in his games.
Exactly. That is the core loop, the central, repeating actions a player takes of almost every game Hall designs. Whether you are managing the atmospheric pressure in Stationeers, monitoring your oxygen tanks in Icarus, or rationing a single dirty bandage in DayZ,
He's digitizing the mountain.
he takes the grueling, punishing reality of climbing a mountain in the death zone and distills it into digital mechanics. He builds systems where patience, preparation, and a deep respect for the environment are the only ways to avoid failure.
He is simulating the Everest experience for people sitting comfortably at their computer desks, and his ambition to build these extreme simulation sandboxes is still driving his current work.
Even today.
Let's bring this right up to the present day. In 2024, the gaming industry saw the reported closure of Intercept Games and a development freeze on the highly anticipated Kerbal Space Program 2.
For context, the original Kerbal Space Program, or KSP, was an incredibly beloved, highly technical spaceflight simulation game where players literally had to learn orbital mechanics and astrophysics to successfully launch rockets.
It's notoriously complex. When the sequel's development froze, Hall saw a massive void in the community. In October 2024, he announced that Rocketwerkz has started work on a brand new game titled Kitten Space Agency.
His stated goal for this project is to replicate the same feeling, commitment, and challenge of existing KSP.
Notice the emphasis on the word challenge.
He continually seeks to replicate extreme difficulty. He survived the jungle, so he simulated starvation and paranoia. He climbed Everest, so he simulated unforgiving alien environments.
And now this.
He sees a community mourning the loss of a complex aerospace simulator, so he steps in to build an orbital physics engine himself. He is a person who looks at the most difficult, complex systems imaginable, both in the natural world and in advanced physics, and says, I want to build a sandbox where people can test their intellect against this.
So, what does this all mean? When we take a step back and look at the whole picture, from tinkering with an Amiga in Oamaru, to mastering logistics in the real New Zealand core of signals, to the starving days in Brunei, to the summit of Everest, to the boardroom battles where he completely bypassed traditional publishers, Dean Hall's story is about a man who repeatedly, almost compulsively, pushes himself to the absolute physical and mental brink.
It really is an incredible arc.
And instead of keeping those intense experiences to himself, he translates that raw intensity into code. He creates these intricate, unforgiving digital spaces so that the rest of us can safely experience a fraction of that challenge and maybe learn something profound about our own resilience and decision-making in the process.
It is a remarkable translation of real-world adversity into interactive art. But it does leave us with a rather profound implication to consider as we wrap up today. If Hall originally designed his survival simulation to train soldiers in emotional resilience, to literally condition the human mind to handle panic, starvation, and the betrayal of trust, and then, after the military rejected it, he released it to the public as an entertainment product.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Are millions of everyday gamers accidentally receiving the exact psychological conditioning the military rejected? This raises an important question. Next time you find yourself playing a grueling, hyper-realistic survival game, sweating over a digital can of food, you have to ask yourself, are you just having fun? Or is the game actually training you for the worst-case scenario?
That is definitely something to chew on the next time you boot up a survival simulator. Are we playing the game, or is the game training us? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring the incredible intersections of survival, military discipline, and game design as much as we did. Until next time, keep questioning the systems around you and stay curious.